There's many great characters in baseball history, but to call this guy a character would be an understatement of his importance to baseball. Bob Uecker, known as Mr. Baseball to many, and a beloved Brewers announcer for decades, has passed away at the age of 90. The Hall of Fame voice and colorful comedian won a 64 World Series with the Cardinals with the Bob Gibson-led squad. Now, born and raised in Milwaukee, he signed his first pro contract with the Brewers in 1956 and reached the majors in 62. His last 6 campaigns in the major leagues was as a backup catcher. Now, the team announced Uecker died Thursday morning, calling one of the most difficult days in Milwaukee Brewers history. In a statement released by the club, Uecker's family said he had been battling small cell lung cancer since early 2023. Even in the face of this challenge, his enthusiasm for life was always present, never allowing his spirit to falter, the family said. Now, best known as a colorful comedian and broadcaster, earned his nickname during one of his numerous historic appearances on Johnny Carson's late night show. Born and raised in Milwaukee, he was a beloved member of the baseball community and a pillar of sport in Wisconsin. Now, when the Brewers clinched the National League Central title in 2024, manager Pat Murray threw an arm around Uecker in the locker room, pulling him tight as players white-knuckled their corks, ready to shower Mr. Baseball in champagne. There is no one who epitomized a champion the way this man does right here. Murphy proclaimed as the players chanted, "Uke, Uke." What an example for us to be with him every single day. Now, the Brewers in the statement said, "Today we take on the heaviest of burdens. Today we say goodbye to our beloved friend Bob Uecker. He was the light of the Brewers, the soundtrack of our summers, the laughter in our hearts, and his passing is a profound loss. He was the heart and soul of Wisconsin, a dear friend. He loved people. His presence warmed every room, and he had a way of welcoming all of us into his world, as if we were lifelong friends. Saying goodbye to him shakes us all. He was so much more than a Milwaukee Brewers icon. He was a national treasure. He entertained us with his words and storytelling, so it's no surprise that his passing now leaves us at a loss for our own words. There's no describing the impact he had on so many, and no words for how much he was loved. We are left with a giant void in our hearts, but also remember the laughter and joy he brought to our lives. Now, as news of his death spread, numerous fans converged at his statue outside American Family Field to pay their respects by leaving flowers, Brewers caps, and even cans of the Miller Lite beer indoors at the base of the statue. He's a narrator for all the best times of a couple of generations' lives, said Sean Bozeman of Franklin, Wisconsin, who visited the statue with his mother. Kerry Larson, a longtime Brewers season ticket holder who lives just down the road from the stadium, said after leaving flowers by the statue that Uecker's call of Ryan Braun's walk-off grand slam and the 2008 late-season victory of the Pittsburgh Pirates remains a ringtone to this day. One of the things I thought today was my baby that's due any day is not going to hear his iconic voice. American Family Field has 2 statues in his honor. There's a statue outside the stadium and another one in the back of Section 422, a nod to the Miller Lite commercial in which he famously said, "Must be in the front row," while getting taken to one of the worst seats in the ballpark. Now, when he signed his first pro contract with the Brewers in 56, he eventually got to the majors in 62. He'd last 6 seasons in the big leagues as a backup, finishing with a 200 average and 14 homers. He won a World Series ring with St. Louis in 64 and played for Atlanta and Philly. Career highlights, I had 2. He often joked. I got an intentional walk for Sandy Koufax, and I got out of a run down against the Mets. Uecker also befriended former Brewers owner MLB Commissioner Bud Selig, who initially hired him as a scout. Selig liked to joke about how Uecker's initial scouting report was staying with mashed potatoes and gravy. He eventually brought Uecker to a broadcast booth, and he became the voice of the Brewers in 71, in the second year after the team moved from Seattle. Now, Uecker remained with the club from the point on and became one of the Brewers' most indelible figures. Chicago Cubs manager Craig Counsell grew up in the Milwaukee area and remembered spending summers throwing a baseball against the roof and catching it while listening to Uecker's broadcasts. There's no single person in his franchise history who's been as iconic as important as Bob Uecker, said Jeff Levering, a member of the Brewers broadcast team since 2015. Even as his celebrity status grew nationwide, he savored the opportunity to continue calling games to fans in his hometown. To be able to do a game each and every day throughout the summer and talk to people every day at 6:30 for a night game, you become part of people's families, he once said. I know that because I get mail from people that tell me that. That's part of the reward for being here, just to be recognized by the way you talk, the way you describe a game, whatever. Uecker was honored by the Hall of Fame with the Ford C. Frick Award in 2003. Spent nearly 20 minutes keeping the Cooperstown near a crowd of about 18,000 in stitches. I still, and this is not sour grapes by any means, still think I should have gone in as a player, he quipped. Now, Uecker got his big break on the field after opening for Don Rickles at Al Hertz nightclub off the field in Atlanta in '69. That performance caught Hertz's attention, and the musician set up to appear in The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He became one of Carson's favorite guests, making more than 100 appearances. Carson was the one who dubbed him Mr. Baseball, and the name stuck. But Uecker's comedy was just a part of his abilities. His warm storytelling delivery made Uecker a natural to become one of the first color commentators on network TV broadcasts in the 70s with ABC. In the 90s, he teamed up with Bob Costas and Joe Morgan for the World Series. From there, he reached most households as one of the Miller Lite All-Stars in popular commercials for the beer brand based out of Milwaukee, and Uecker later launched his TV acting career in '85 on Mr. Belvedere, an ABC program. Uecker eventually played George Owens during the successful 122-episode run of the series that lasted 6 years as the head of the family and sports writer in a home that brings in a butler who struggled to adapt to American household. Now, in a bit of casting that kept things pretty close to home, he also played a prominent role in the movies Major League and Major League 2 as a crass announcer, Harry Dole, for a down-and-out Cleveland Indians franchise that finds a way to become playoff contenders just a bit outside. I'm part of American folklore, I guess, he told the AP in 2003, but I'm not a Hollywood guy. Baseball and broadcasting were in my blood. His wry description of badly wayward pitch, just a bit outside, in the movie is still often repeated by announcers and fans at ballparks all over. Of course, Charlie Sheen. Now, his acting left some to believe he has more. He knew he was more about being funny than a serious baseball announcer, but his tenure and observations with the Brewers were spot on, especially when games were tight. Equally enjoyable were games that weren't, when Uecker would tell stories about other major leaguers, his own career, and his hobbies as a fisherman and golfer. I don't think anyone wants to see somebody screwing around when you got a good game going, he said. I think people see Major League and they thought Harry Dole would figure that's what Bob Uecker does. I do that sometimes, I do. But when I get a good game going, I don't mess around. In later years, he took a serious approach to his health, swimming daily leading up to heart surgery in April 2010. Very soon after the procedures, doctors said Uecker returned to walking several miles and was ahead in recovery. Now, when he pushed to return to the booth, he began calling games again in July, saying he bribed the doctors by allowing them to throw out the first pitch. You talk about all the things Bob has done, he never wanted to leave Milwaukee, Selig said. Above all, he made himself into a great play-by-play announcer. That's what he did. He's everything to this franchise and loves every minute of it. Uecker's own career provided most of his material. His former teammates said he would do impressions of other broadcasters on the bus, but Uecker turned the spotlight himself after his playing career was over. I signed with the Braves for $3,000, the Milwaukee Braves. That bothered my dad at the time because he didn't have that kind of dough, he said, but he eventually scraped it up. Another classic, when I came up to bat with 3 men on and 2 out in the ninth inning, I look in the other team's dugout and they're already in street clothes. Uecker also presided over the stirring ceremony that closed Milwaukee's County Stadium in 2000. When the Brewers' new stadium opened at Miller Park in 2001, the team began selling Uecker seats high in the upper deck and obstructed for $1. After the Brewers were eliminated from the playoffs in 2024, his last season, Mr. Baseball made sure to visit the locker room and also support the players in the only way he could. It was kind of tough. All the other stuff is what it is. Talking to Yuki on one-on-one was tough. Outfielder Kristen Yelich said at the time. He means a lot. I've gotten to know him pretty good over the last 7 years. He's right over there. Just a great guy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a Montreal Expo fan. And I can tell you, as strong as Dave Van Horn was for the Expos, as Brian Williams' words for the Blue Jays, Bob Uecker was unique. I don't know. He did so much with so little for so many for so long, and so good. All I can say is rest in peace, brother. There's a place in baseball history for Bob Uecker. It's about a guy at the park who comes at every game. And we have him small town baseball in New Brunswick. We had a fan in the North Shore who would come to all our games for the Beldoon Mooseheads, and we finally won. He would heckle the other team to be 17-2 or 16-3, 5-10 run rule, And when we finally won the game once, he said, finally I can go home. And that's Bob Uecker. Bob Uecker would fit in any baseball league across Canada and the States. I don't think Canadians really knew how appreciated he was in Milwaukee. And maybe down the road we never will, because how do you explain Danny Ganivan to an American? How do you explain Keith Jackson to a Canadian? You know, is he the greatest announcer of all time? No, he's the greatest baseball personality of all time. There's only one Bob Uecker, and passing away, it's been a rough day for a lot of people. So you have our prayers and memories. If you want to share a memory of Bob Uecker, please do so. Milwaukee is a great baseball town. When I was a kid, the '82 World Series was something we'd watch while we were playing poker games in our hometown poker game, like high stakes poker. And I'll never forget that. He said, "That's an ugly jersey." He said, "No, fuck, that's rolly fingers. Leave him alone." So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our tribute baseball podcast, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share. If you like Bob Uecker, share this podcast with people in Milwaukee and tell them Canada mourns with you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good one.